All right, welcome to Poets Have Something to Say. We have a fascinating guest with us for the February show, and we've been coming up with some fantastic people. Of course, recently the Green Bay Poet Laureate, Marion Brabham, who did a great job. She's very exciting. We've got Freesia McKee. She's a poet, essayist, and educator whose work explores the intersections of space, memory, queerness, social practice. She currently serves as assistant professor of English at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, and she teaches poetry, creative writing, and composition. Freesia, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I think it was like 2.5 or 3 years ago we had you. You were one of the first guests ever. Did you realize that?
Yeah. Oh, I don't think I realized I was one of the first. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us during the interview, we're going to delve a little deeper on your most recent projects, and whatever you want to talk about. So, Freesia McKee here with us. Your latest chapbook is called City of Honesty, and I understand you have a poem from that to read for us to start us off with.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll read the last poem in the chapbook.
Okay.
A lot of the poems in that chapbook have the same title, including this one, which is Love in a Time of Fascism. You have no idea how much I love you, how much I need your voice. With frost on the grass and scary morning radio, you have no idea. With the blusters that almost swept me off my bike, going to work with the youngest activists we know, no idea how much I need to hear your heartbeat through your dance moves. In your sigh, your coughs, your shudderings, I hear your breath and need this solidarity of presence for as long as you will give it. The slap of the back door, your bike lock as you chain to mine, the scraping of your chair legs, the sound of steam off various pots of soup, above the punk fundraiser in a basement where you drop change into the bucket against another war. You have no idea when you say you can't focus on anything else. Genocides, dictators, and deportations, shootings in all bleak seasons, your unsure jaw shaking, so tender and your own. Is there any way to tell you how precious, how I hold you a raw jewel, a pumpkin seed? How much I need your unsure gait, stilted and aflame. Your worries, a wall of grapes. I want to spit the sour out, ferment every acrid thing into a cup of liquid drinkable. I want you to remember there are moments I need nothing more than your voice when it is feeble. To know you are a survivor makes my survival possible.
That's beautiful, Freesia. Wow.
Thank you.
Very powerful I mean, I don't even need to say it. That's a super powerful poem especially in the times we live in. And of course, as you know, I don't have a political podcast, but it's ironic that it seems like the poets are taking a pretty important role in our society today. Can you comment on that a bit?
Yeah, I recently attended the Woodland Pattern Poetry Marathon.
Yes.
So Woodland Pattern, for folks that don't know, is a really beautiful poetry center and poetry bookstore in Milwaukee. And they've been around for like 40 years or so. And for about 30 of those years, at the end of every January, they have a poetry marathon, which is kind of a fundraiser for them, but also kind of a poetry family reunion also. So there's about 200 poets that convene, and over a weekend, each poet reads 5 minutes each, one after another, for hours and hours.
Wow.
As a marathon. And so, I went this year, as I usually do, and it was really amazing to just be immersed in poetry, as it always is, but in this particular moment, political moment, social moment, cultural moment that we're in.
Yes.
And just to see, some people responding really directly, but as Dasha Kelly Hamilton said, she's like, sometimes you write a poem and it kind of takes on different meanings or
Right.
new meanings as you kind of move on through time. And I felt that sense with so many of the poems that were shared by various people, that they were like responding to our situation, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, and some of that poetry is written really recently, and some of it is years old. And that's kind of the amazing thing about art, is that it allows us to connect through time and space through those universal themes.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is so. And in my place as the humble poet laureate of North Fond du Lac, whatever I can contribute, and I would love to come down to Milwaukee maybe next year. They have that every year.
They
I
do,
understand. I would love
yeah.
to be a part of
Yep.
that. That sounds, and there's a feeling of solidarity, kind of this, I guess you can't almost describe it in words, but having all these hearts beating as one.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. And like as poets, I sometimes, it's one of those communities where when you meet other poets, even if you don't know them very well, there's sort of the sense of like, yeah, these are my people.
Yeah, yeah, I
Um,
get that. I get that too. I say that to my wife all the time. I'm going to the writers club because these are my people.
yeah, exactly. And it just yeah, there's something that feels really good about that. And I mean, the poetry marathon too, it's like there's a youth hour, so there's like third and fourth graders, who are
Mm-hmm.
writing
Hmm.
poems from the perspective of third and
I'm
fourth
sure.
graders. There's, poets laureate from across the state. There's, people who come at poetry from very different directions. And so, that's another aspect of that event, is that it's kind of this like showcase of the different kind of corners of Wisconsin poetry. But yeah, that feeling of being together and being connected just feels really good.
We're with Freesia McKee, our February guest, 2026 on Poets Have Something to Say. Of course, if you have comments, uh, you can put them down below on YouTube, and or if you have any suggestions for guests, there's just tons of. I recently talked with James Landwehr, and he's with the Fellowship of Poets, and he gave me like a list of 25 other poets to interview. So I think I've got a good list here.
Okay, yeah, that'll take you
It'll take me for a while.
for several months.
No, I
Yeah.
bet Frisia, I bet you have like another 50 I could get to. And I probably should ask you to email me some more guest opportunities, because I could go on and on with this show. 3 years and strong. Tell us a bit about your radio show. And of course, being an old radio guy myself, I'd love to be a part of that sometime. Tell us about how that evolved, the radio show.
Yeah, so I was first involved with FM radio in maybe 20 15, 2016,
Mm-hmm.
with River West Radio in Milwaukee,
Okay.
which was just a great opportunity. And I had a weekly morning show with my friend and artistic collaborator, Anja, not Anja Seeger, and it was always poetry themed. And it
Great.
was a 2 hour show. And we did a lot of wacky stuff. Also, that radio studio is sort of like in a storefront window, so you can see the goings on the street,
Wow.
which
Yeah.
is great material if you're two poets on the radio, just to comment on what's happening.
Oh, sure.
Um,
Yeah. Running commentary of what's happening. Yeah.
yeah. So we did that for a year or two, and then I moved away to go to grad school in Miami, and do an MFA program, and then I just moved around a bunch. And I always wanted to do radio again, um, and just kind of was moving so much that I never really had the opportunity to. And so then when I got to Stevens Point in 2023, I was like, oh yeah, they have 90 FM there, which is a really great community supported campus radio station.
Hmm.
They've been around for decades. They're really well known for their trivia contest, which I
Oh,
guess is
right.
like,
Right.
yeah, it's like it goes for a whole weekend every spring, and
Hmm.
they have people from all over the world who are involved with that. So it's just there's a very solid kind of culture around that radio station. And so I wanted to do a show, but I was starting this job and it took me a couple of years. So the fall of 2025, it was finally the right time. And so it's called Waterlines, a Central Wisconsin poetry talk show. And kind of similar to your podcast, I just have different poets on to talk about their work, talk about their creative process, and just to, carve out some time to talk about poetry. So I haven't had too many guests on there so far because it's not very old yet. And the way they do talk shows, it's sort of an every other week rotation. But I also had James Hamilton on my show. I had
Hmm.
Cassandra Zhang, who's a wonderful poet from Wausau. And then I've had Ari Gronholm. I've had some great student poets from UWSP, which is like the best part of my job, is that I get to work with the student poets on campus. Um,
Hmm.
yeah,
Oh, great.
it's really fun. It's fun to be in a radio studio,
It is.
right?
It is. I did it 20 years, and just just the shtick, is fun. Just the I was part of the morning show at KFIZ Radio, and it was just fun to be part of that whole thing. We sang the Good Morning song in the morning, and I was the news guy, so I was the straight man.
Okay. Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
I wanted to make everybody else look great. They were funny, and I was the straight guy. But it was a lot of fun, and radio was just too much fun. But now, of course, I have a real job in customer service. But did that for 20 years, and I'm with you. I guess when you said how fun radio is, it really was a great career. It was a lot of fun, and I got to meet as news director in Fond du Lac. I got to meet a ton of cool people, mayors and congressmen, and you get that. There's that feeling of solidarity with the community as well with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and to like be able to have a designated time for a conversation is really nice. You're not
Mm-hmm.
sort of so many conversations happen on the way from one thing to another.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I mean, radio is also sort of an improvisational performance because you are
Yeah.
presenting the conversation to the audience, but it's not like you've, come up with it beforehand.
Yeah, and radio, I know it. I'm sure you've had that feeling before too, where they say you've got 2 minutes till break, and you've got to just ad lib for
Right.
2 minutes. And
Yeah.
so, like Jerry and I, the morning guy, okay, you got 2 minutes, so just talk about anything. And somehow we would just come up with anything, and
Yeah,
and
and
you
that's
learn
a
how to
skill
do it.
unto
Hmm.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah, you can talk about nothing, but
Uh-huh.
anyway. But this show allows me just the opposite. It's talking about what's important to my heart, and as I get older, I think a poetry interview show for me is just like a dream.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so cool that you do this. And I mean, with poets too, it's like often when we gather, we're performing the actual poems or, something like that. And so to have a
Hmm.
place to talk about,
Hmm.
all of the other aspects of being a poet is really nice too.
Right. Yeah, and I know, recently I was giving some thought to, I grew up in pretty nice conditions in Oshkosh, Wisconsin and everything. And so I guess a lot of people would say I was privileged, growing up, privileged white guy.
Yeah.
And so, and I go to these open mics and I see these people have been through all this pain. And somehow I feel like my work is kind of naive compared to theirs. And so the open mics kind of helped me get my exposure, even at my age, exposure to the full picture of the suffering and the desperation, and, which is part of human life too.
I think an open mic can be a really sacred space
Hmm.
of cross pollination and
Yeah.
of connection happening across, all sorts of boundaries.
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
and the vulnerability. And even if a poem is about, like candy canes or the
Right.
clouds or whatever, it still
Hmm.
is vulnerable to write something, first of all, and then
Right.
to share something that you've made with an audience,
Yeah, it
who
is.
most of whom you probably don't know.
Right.
I mean, that's really vulnerable. And so an open mic is also a shared act of vulnerability. And that is powerful for us and
Hmm.
can be healing and can be, sort of foster bravery and
Hmm.
just, yeah, creates. I mean, I really feel that with the Second Tuesday Poetry Open Mic in Stevens Point, that
Hmm.
there are some really important friendships that people have made, and we might not have encountered each other otherwise, because we're very different generations, or we're just, living very different lives, or whatever other
Right.
differences there are. But people show up dutifully every month. And I mean, what I'm realizing with that open mic too, and we've been doing that for about 2 years,
Hmm.
is that it really like takes on, I guess maybe only a year, um, it really takes on a life of its own, and it becomes this sort of um, sort of self-perpetuating space.
Yeah, I like how you talk about vulnerabilities and this meshing of people together, kind of this natural tapestry of voices, right?
Yeah,
And how
yeah,
beautiful that each, you could see each open mic as sort of a work of art in itself. And
absolutely. Yeah.
sometimes I do like go to these open mics too, and maybe it's the privileged part of myself saying, feeling sorry for some people that are very needy and they're just letting it all hang out. And what would you say to a student? Say you've had a student at Stevens Point who is kind of vulnerable. You think they might need some help, psychiatrically, and they're oversharing, or is there such thing as that, as oversharing in these things?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and it's something that creative writing professors, kind of that general topic, something that we talk about with
Hmm.
each other a lot, because in a math class or something like that, the student probably isn't sharing that much about their life.
Right.
But if we're teaching a class where there's memoir, where there's poetry, self-disclosure is kind of not necessary, but is a normal and normalized part of the art form. And
Right.
so, yeah, how do you figure out like where the line is? And on kind of a practical level, it's like there's lots of sharing information about campus resources. Most campuses are
Hmm.
really good about providing like the
Hmm.
counseling center and
Right.
different kind of student support services for all sorts of stuff. So that's part of it in terms of like
Hmm.
safety issues and well-being. And then there
Right.
is another aspect of it that is related to um, the aesthetics of self-disclosure. And so how do you navigate wanting to share something about yourself,
Hmm.
and also ensuring that you are kind of making it something that the reader wants to read about.
Hmm.
And I think
Right.
there is um, a lot of, um, I think that very self disclosing work demands a lot from the writer in terms of, yes, you're sharing about yourself, but you also need enough distance from what you're sharing about,
Hmm.
to kind of be able to see and like curate the details,
Yeah.
and toe the line between like, is it a rant, is it, do I have craft elements in there? One of the things that helps with that is to have time,
Hmm.
right, to just like live more life from
Hmm.
after the thing that you're writing about. And for
Mm-hmm.
most college students, they haven't been adults for that long. They've just been adults for a couple of years.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so a lot of times people don't have a lot of distance. Um, so it's sometimes what that looks like in class is like just having a conversation about that and trying to
Mm-hmm.
practice that. Um, and knowing that students will, continue to write poetry and go on. I think in terms of a community open mic, there's going to be a lot of self-disclosure from community poets, right? And
Mm-hmm.
some people
Mm-hmm.
do use it as sort of like a therapy, they want it to be a
Yeah.
therapy
Yeah.
session or something.
Right.
And as the open mic facilitator, you just sort of, I mean, my approach is, it's an open mic. People are going to bring all sorts of stuff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right, right. And you sort of have to give guidelines too about vulgarity and, you know, certain guidelines
Yeah.
too. I guess I would. I guess it's up to the coordinator, facilitator to really, you know,
Yeah.
to do that. But yeah, I had a thought too about, when you're counseling a student about, well, your stuff is good, but it's, that sort of there's some red flags there about them being vulnerable or maybe mentally ill. And I talked to my son about this. He says it's no big deal, Dad. These days, therapy is, by the younger generation and people in their 20s, it's more accepted if you need therapy. When I grew up, it was kind of a taboo, that you were
Right.
crazy or something. But now it's more accepted. I understand that you recently toured Harvard, and my son and I went to see some Red Sox games about 3 years ago, and we
Cool.
toured Harvard as well. And what the person that was giving the tour was saying, yeah, about maybe 60% or so of, I think I got this statistic right, have received some kind of mental health services at Harvard. So
Sure.
that was
Yeah.
eye-opening for me. Anyway, I digress, but I guess my point is that it's a normal phenomenon to get help, but poetry, there's a thin line there, but poetry can be definitely a help in helping us deal with our stresses.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. And it gets really tricky, right? Because poetry isn't therapy and poetry class is certainly not therapy, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
poetry teacher isn't a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there are, I
Right.
mean, anybody who's done creative writing, I think has seen that getting your thoughts on paper helps you organize your thoughts, right? Getting your
Mm-hmm.
feelings on
Right.
paper helps you see these feelings exist. And there's something that can be really affirming about that. Um, yeah, and my hope with any creative writing space or class that I offer is that people feel positively about having the chance to say things that they're really wanting to say.
That's awesome. I was just curious. You may not know this off the cuff, but has Stevens Point ever thought of having a poet laureate?
So when I was first applying for my job, I just was Googling different things about Stevens Point.
Right.
And so there was a poet laureate appointed maybe 10 or 15 years ago.
Oh,
And
cool.
I have not heard, I would love to connect with him. I haven't heard from him. One person, I've only talked to one person who said, oh, he, had a job where he had to leave town a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I think that does exist. I think it seems to, as far as I can tell, it's a kind of dormant thing.
Okay.
But Wausau recently started a poet laureate program, and that has been really cool. I think they started
Yeah.
it 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, we had Dawn Anderson on. I had on the show a couple of years ago,
Cool,
and
cool,
she's
cool.
very, very good poet. And I think they have somebody has. I don't remember her name. I've got to interview that person, but somebody took over for Dawn recently in Wausau. So, but hey, in the waning moments here, always a pleasure, Freesia. You're so interesting and creative, and I wish you the best in the future. Do you have a poem to take us out with today?
Sure. I'll read another poem from this chapbook, my chapbook, City of Honesty, through Water's Edge Press. And there's kind of a combination of poems in there, newer poems with the title Love in the Time of Fascism. And then there's other poems about cities. So I'll read one of those. What makes a city? This terminal, both departure and arrival, interstice and actual, no different than a country. Train stations bent like knees or elbows. Every private lot once public. A city, not necessarily the presence or absence of people. A packed remote highway is not a city, not necessarily the presence or absence of buildings. A dam-flooded valley, no longer a city or constellation of tents. Yes, a tent city. Is a ghost town a city? What's the difference between a city and a town? In a city, she says, you don't have to leave for any basic need. Queer the train, intervene, peaked present station, someone else's memory. We've heard the stories so many times, it's like they happened to us. Is every encampment eventually ruined or abandoned? Is a place still a city as long as the recorder runs?
Very nice. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful analogies, metaphors. Very nice.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't usually read that one out loud, but I thought, that the first one that I read is a little more concrete. This one is a little more abstract and experimental.
This is one of those where I'm going to have to read it 2 or 3 more times. But well, thanks,
Yeah.
and I really enjoy having you on the. We'll have to do it in another couple of years here.
Yes.
In anything in the future, we'll probably see you on the road somewhere in an open mic. I would say.
Definitely.
Do you have your next writing project started already, or what's for publishing in the future?
Yeah, so like a lot of poets, I have a few different projects that
Right.
I feel like I'm done with the writing and I'm kind of like shopping them around to publishers. In terms of projects I'm kind of actively working on, I'm working on an autofiction project, which is new for me because I haven't written a lot of fiction. And then I'm writing a lot more poems with that title, Love in a Time of Fascism. So I think, there's a bunch more of those and there probably will be more to come.
It reminds me of a song title from Bruce Cockburn called "Lovers in a Dangerous Time."
Oh, that's great.
Isn't that
Thanks
a great?
for sharing that.
That's a great song, I think, too. If you haven't heard it, well, thanks very much, Freesia. Again, total pleasure here. Good luck on all your projects. And I have my latest poetry book coming out, A Tapestry of Moments. I'm having a little trouble with the self-publishing, and I'm working with a company that's helped me do that. But hopefully we'll have print copies sometime next month. But
So exciting.
yeah, it is. Isn't it fun? And then when you get that book in the mail and you open it up, it's so fun. Yeah. Well, thanks, Freesia, and we'll see you down the road. Freesia McKee.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yep,
Bye-bye.
thanks. Thanks very much, and have a great week. And this has been the latest edition of Poets Have Something to Say. Freesia McKee.